Good morning. A very warm and toasty welcome to everyone on this week's Smoke Sundays. I feel like a lot of you wafted in with the smell of coffee in our posters every day. I think we should start coloring our posters with coffee.
Yes.
Today we are joined by Bharat Singhal and his team from Bili Hu to share their journey, one brew at a time. Before we begin, allow me to go over some house rules. Please keep your phones on silent mode during the talk, following which there will be a short Q&A. There will also be a coffee tasting at the end. Most of you got to it before I could say that. And I invite everyone to tickle your taste buds and show the team some love. Allow me to introduce the face behind the brand, Bharat Singhal. An environment designer by profession and an inventor at heart, he has a keen interest in creating different blends, experimenting with roasts, and developing interesting flavors. He has made a splash in the creative industry by designing for retail showrooms, brew pubs, exhibitions, events, installations, television set design, and other narrative environments. Without further ado, let's hear from Bharat himself about his first love, coffee. Please welcome him with a warm round.
Thank you everybody for coming here firstly. Yeah, I know it's a holiday Sunday, but I'm glad to see the love for coffee. So thank you for that. And yeah, like she said, I went to design school in Pune, MIT Institute of Design. And that is where, this is in 2011, that I came across a project with the Coffee Board of India. And they asked me to design a model which they could take to all the leading bee schools in India, wherein anybody who comes into the value chain, they would offer subsidies. So this is a project that they gave to me to work on, and then subsequently it was a 6-week project. It went on for 6 months because it intrigued me so much. I understood that coffee is all about agriculture first, cappuccinos much later, and then I went and studied coffee with the Coffee Board in 2014, and 2017 is when I actually took the plunge and started Bili Hu. So yeah, now it's been 5.5 years. So what is Bili Hu is, firstly, it's a Kannada word. It's actually pronounced as Bili Hu or Bili Huwa. Different dialects, of course, across Karnataka. But it's actually significant of a coffee blossom, which is a white flower. So Bili is a white, Hu is a flower. That is the true origin of the coffee bean. Because has any one of you ever been to a coffee plantation before?
Yes.
Cool, cool, nice. And you?
I'm
Nice.
Cool.
Cool, right. You would have heard of Chikmagalur, right? Right? Chikmagalur used to be Indira Gandhi's constituency, and of course, like our parents know it because of Indira Gandhi. We know it more because of CCD, because Cafe Coffee Day was born out of Chikmagalur, of course. Now there's of course huge amounts of tourism, but Chikmagalur is where India first started growing coffees back in 1600. We all think India is a tea drinking nation, right? Yes, we're a tea drinking nation, but let's divide tea and chai. So we are more of a chai drinking nation, right? We don't appreciate or brew teas the way they're supposed to be brewed. Similarly with coffee, we started growing coffees in 1600, 220 years prior to teas in India. So 1600 is when we started growing coffees in India. 1800 is when the East India Company first time imported tea. 1820 is when we started growing tea in India. So I would like to say that coffee is more peculiar to India than teas. Is there any tea person here who really loves their tea?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Great. We'll find later. Okay.
But coffee is only grown in the south?
Right. Due to global warming, it's now being grown across northeast as well, but otherwise primarily south of India. So around the world, coffee is grown around the equator, but consumed more away from the equator because of colder regions, of course. But yeah, due to global warming, it's now moving. I heard somebody grew coffee crop in Pune as well.
Yes.
Northeast is growing. It's a very new crop, so the coffee beans are tiny. But over the course of time, I'm sure get better coffees in the Northeast. Also, Northeast, the soil is very pure, right now. So they're not like using external fertilizers and stuff like that to increase the yield. So the yield is still limited, but it's beautiful. Okay, so I want to also throw some light on Bili Hu about why we named it like that. So back in the day, we first started growing coffees in Chikmagalur. There was a Yemeni saint who actually smuggled the crop to India. So as the history says, he brought 7 beans from Yemen and he smuggled it and he planted it in his backyard in Chikmagalur, which is now, of course, rest is history. But that range is now touted as Baba Budan Giri range. So Baba Budan, Giri being hills, so that entire range is named after him. Though of course that's not the only range we grow coffee in, it's across Chikmagalur and then the foothills and beyond. So the coffee flower, the white flower, the petals wear off, okay, and the bud itself, it becomes a fruit, like a red cherry, and the seed of that fruit is a coffee bean. So hence it's like the true origin of coffee. And coffee harvest around the world happens once a year. Coffee blossom happens once a year. So when the blossom happens, the farmer knows, let's say the blossom happens in February, harvest happens in October through the year. So when it happens in October, November, December, the farmer already knows what his yield is going to look like. So, it's a huge celebration post-harvest when the flowers blossom because the farmer knows what eventually he's going to get at the end of the year. So that's just me tasting copious amounts of coffees. How we taste coffees is using a spoon, 12 grams of coffee. We slurp and we spit it out. We obviously don't drink, like even alcohol, we don't drink as much. You mostly take a sip and you spit it out. So what is interesting about coffees is that every little thing, the dry aroma, the wet aroma, dry aroma in the sense when you smell the beans, when you smell the powder, and then when you add water and you smell it, then when you actually taste it, everything is completely different. So coffee is also, it's a tall claim, but it's on the internet. Coffee is one of the most complex beverages known to mankind, over and above wines and whiskeys and everything else that we consume. And which is the most interesting part, which is what keeps me going. Because every single day we're learning something new about coffee. It's not like it's packaged in a bottle and then you just drink it as is or like do something with it. How you brew it makes all the difference. How you serve it, and of course from the plantation, how it's grown, how it's processed, stored, roasted, blended, ground, brewed, and then served at what temperature, that makes all the difference. So when you're drinking your coffee, if you're having black coffee, you realize that as it cools down, it completely changes the flavor profile. So this is a typical picture of a coffee plantation in Chikmagalur. My coffee planter is also here, but I don't see him in the audience. I think he's outside of the machine. But so the planter is here. He runs this plantation, one of the leading plantations in India called Kandadevrapura Estate. You might have seen this name across most of the specialty coffee shops across the country. Every big coffee shop would have coffee from Kandadevrapura Estate or Harley Estate. He's literally taught me everything on a tissue paper back in 2011. And I'm kind of nervous to be talking in front of him. But that's a picture from Kandadevrapura Estate. There he is, Shaman. Okay, so that's a picture of a coffee plantation, and how you see, what is very unique about coffees in India is, have you been exposed to coffees around the world?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what is very unique about Indian coffees is there are 2 points. If you're very, very easily I'll tell you. One is coffees are grown under shade. So means it's all a wild forest cover. It's grown in the hills, right? So it's all a wild forest cover. And the plants at the bottom, those are the coffee crops. So the taller trees are only lending shade. So what happens here is something very interesting. Uh, Through the year, the coffee crops, they get nurtured by the taller trees. So how does that help? Now remember, throughout the presentation, coffee is going to be about agriculture, not cappuccinos, lattes, nothing like that. We are first addressing the cherry, because that is where the coffee comes from. Okay, also after the session, these are coffee cherries. So you can open, smell, tear it open, see. So this is Sadini cherry, like it's been dried under the sun for 3 weeks. It's absolutely like lost all the humidity in it. And it's got 2 coffee beans inside each cherry. So you can open it, see that. And then rest I will talk about. So what happens with the taller trees is, through the year there's no direct rainfall, hence less leaf damage, no direct sunlight, and obviously the taller trees hold the soil together better, so less erosion. Less erosion, not no erosion, because of course we all have tweeted about Kodagu floods and Chikmagalur landslides and all of that. Yeah, so why does that matter to your final cup? Tall shade, lending trees, less leaf damage, less erosion, all of that. Basically, a fruit is able to ripen really well, right? So when the fruit is ripened, then obviously the beans inside will produce better flavors, right? So that is one. And okay, I will come back to that. Second point is multi-crop. So tell me, what all do we grow in the south of India that we consume in F&B, apart from tea and coffee?
Peppers.
Right, spices, pepper,
Orange trees.
orange trees, citrus fruits, crazy amounts of citrus fruits, right? And cardamom, spices, and something that we all love to indulge in. You'll all get, sorry? Yes, right. So we do realize, right, that chocolate also comes from plants. Are we aware of cacao pods, right? It's like a green papaya that is hanging off the tree. So that is where our chocolate comes from. By the way, after the session, we also have some really nice chocolates done by Malabar Secrets, and which is by this lady called Beena Rabani. It has 9 spices and coffee and chocolate. And we have another chocolate bar by a brand called Paul and Mike, which also has Bili Hu coffee with a special blend that we've done. So we'll all try that after the session. Coming back to what all we grow in the south of India, can you identify what is growing here?
Pepper.
Right. These are all pepper vines. So there's the silver oak trees. Every 10 to 12 years, the farmer is going to sell that wood and make money. There are other fruits, and there's of course coffee crops at the bottom. So all of this is growing together in a plantation. You know how agriculture is, right, in India? Lala ji ka khet hai, sab kuch ek sath grow ho raha hai. They want to, obviously, like in a retail space, you make sure each square inch is used, and you demand money, right, for that, and you expect to make money out of every square inch in a retail space. Similarly, in a plantation, in a farm, the farmer grows everything in a manner that he's able to eat and make money. So this silver oak tree is going to sell the timber, there's spices, there's fruits, all of this. This is very, very unique to India. Nowhere else in the world do they grow so much together at one plantation. There are of course places now, different plantations, teas and everywhere, especially Japan, where they've demarcated plots, and then for harvest there's a robot going through the plots and harvesting beans. But it's something very futuristic, not entirely something that is going to get adopted by any country in the near future. But the charm here is that when all of it is going together, there is a natural exchange of nutrition first and somewhat flavors. However, there's no research in black and white that has proven that if you grow pepper and coffee or like phenol together, there will be an exchange. But there is evidently an exchange because the roots are all meeting together. Then there's of course pollination happening, right? So with pollination, you are also exchanging a lot of components which we still don't know. So global it's known that if you have, if you want floral and fruity notes to your coffee, you go to the West. If you want chocolatey and spicy notes to your coffee, you come to India. So that is what is very, very unique, and that is what makes us gets this huge demand from across the world for Indian estate coffees. Excuse me. Okay, we all have heard of Arabica Robusta.
Yeah.
Okay. Any idea what is Arabica, what is Robusta? Are these names of beverage? Is this a name of Sorry? Variety of beans. These are basically coffee crops. Arabica plant or Robusta plant. Okay. And then obviously it yields Arabica beans or Robusta beans. So these are the two typical varieties of coffee plants, but there are way many more, but we won't delve into that. And plus within Arabica Robusta, there are different species. Okay. So in India, we grow some of the finest Robustas in the world. As a nation, we're extremely proud of. As a coffee fraternity, we are very proud of it. For the last 15 odd years, we've been winning awards for the finest Robustas in the world. Earlier, it used to be Vietnam, but then India took over. In fact, Shravan's family estate, Harday estate, has been winning that awards in Sakleshpur. Have you all heard of Sakleshpur? It's the foothills of Chikmagalur, 4 hours from Bangalore. Beautiful place. So always higher elevation is more Arabicas, lower elevations are more Robustas. India, in general, the coffee growing altitude is more Robusta friendly, but when we grow good Arabicas, it becomes like a huge USP for the plantation. Okay, yeah. So this is about harvest. So let's say October is the early harvest for coffee. November, December is peak harvest. January is the low harvest, like all the remaining parts of it. Plants that are not picked yet. So the pluckers will go and pluck. So incidentally, in Assam, in the northeast rather, we have pluckers who pluck tea leaves. It's a very meticulous, intelligent process. So those same people come down south and they pluck coffee cherries because they're used to it. They have nuanced understanding. So there are a lot of colors, right, to a cherry. When you go buy mangoes or cherries, there's so many colors, right? So they're aware of which one to pick. Otherwise, how do you get that maroon box of cherries or red box of cherries or like a yellow-orange box of cherries, right? So they're all trained like that. So if you see this lady, she's actually holding 2 bags. One is a yellow one and a white one around her waist. And she's plucking, this is called selective harvest. So when she's plucking the less ripened beans, putting it into one bag, and the other fully ripened beans into the other bag. Because of course there's a consumer for every agricultural produce. For example, when you go buy veggies, you see a carrot, and you see a carrot coming out of another carrot, but you don't pick out that carrot, that funny looking carrot, you just pick out the one straight piece. But what about the farmer and what about the crop itself? A carrot coming out of a carrot is not wrong, or it's not bad, or it's not bad to your palate. It looks a certain way. So I'm just switching between topics by talking about sustainable and responsible consumption. There was a huge campaign by the UN very recently, and they used this carrot example in their campaign that all shapes and sizes are good and fit for consumption. So here what's happening is the green beans, less ripened beans, they'll still get used by, let's say, I'll be very controversial here, please, so that you all also contribute. The less ripened beans will perhaps be dark roasted and used in a South Indian filter coffee blend, or Nespresso pods, or some other cheap commercial coffee, versus the fully ripened beans, which should fetch a higher revenue to the plantation because it will be exported to big import houses around the world who will really meticulously use those beans and create blends and offer it specialty coffee shops around the world. What is specialty coffee? One very quick, I will just touch upon this topic. What is specialty coffee? Have you guys heard of specialty coffee? Yeah, a lot of people have been using this term.
Different tastes, different.
Right.
depending on how it ripens.
right? But we're all aware of big coffee brands in the market, right? Can somebody please name some nice coffee brands in the market apart from, of course, Bili Hu? Blue Tokai, somebody said, right? Curious Style, Third Wave, right? So we're all new age coffee brands, of course, but Curious Life, Blue Tokai, not Third Wave, but let's say a couple other brands are specialty coffee brands. So there's something called commodity coffee and there's something called specialty coffee. What is commodity coffee? So coffee is the second most traded commodity in the world after coal. Okay, coffee after coal, yes. Coffee waste is touted as the new fuel. So for all you know, tomorrow I can become a don, in some other country selling coffee waste and making fuel out of it. But anyway, that is commodity coffee. Okay. Then there's something called specialty coffee, wherein the coffee market itself divided itself and said, okay, we are specialty and there's something called commercial. In specialty coffee, there is a specialty coffee association headquartered out of the US. It's called scacoffee.com. You can look it up on the internet. So they have devised a strategy just to make sure that all the good coffee around the world is under one umbrella. So in that case, all the coffees that anybody grows and thinks that they can fetch revenues and like a recognition as a specialty coffee, it is roasted, brewed, and at certain temperatures, certain set parameters, and then judged. Each cup of coffee is judged upon its body, flavor, aroma, taste, mouthfeel, aftertaste, and then they get into the sustainability factor, traceability factor, and reproducibility factor. So if you've done this year, can you also do it next year? Are you sourcing it sustainably? Are you also conducting some unique post-harvest process? Right? Now that cherry that you saw, think of it like a mango. Okay? So the peel of the cherry, the fruit itself, the pulp, and then the bean inside. So remember how the mango has a gutli inside, like the seed of the mango. How do you reach the seed of cherry is where all the innovation is happening around the world. So in the specialty coffee scenario, once you brew this coffee at certain temperature, ratio to water and all of that, and then sip exactly 12 grams of coffee, if it scores 80 plus out of 100, it is awarded a specialty grade. So a specialty coffee shop means all the coffees are specialty grade. It's been awarded an XYZ grade. So then a lot of marketeers, we also say that this coffee has scored 82 or 96, like this is fabulous, 92 or like whatever, XYZ figure, which is 80 plus. So as a coffee connoisseur, you would know that okay, this coffee is extra good, extra special. But it's not about special, this is specialty processing and making sure that the entire chain is entirely traceable and it's done in certain sustainable methods. Sorry?
Which month is the
Harvest,
harvest?
early harvest is October, then November, December, Jan, and then pretty much the end of Jan or Feb is like the end of harvest. March is the blooming of the flowers. The first rains that come into the hills, that is when you get the coffee flowers.
That is why we have acids which is coming down.
Sorry?
That is why you have the hills coming down during this month.
Right. It's not the tea months, it doesn't conflict. Even the Shikara women in Dal Lake, they all come to the south, Goa, Kerala, everywhere, in their off season, and then they go back to Srinagar. I mean, it's just a small story that I know. So now, coming back to how do you reach the bean inside coffees? So a lot of times we have coffees and then think of having a sponge cake or a madeleine or like cookies after coffee because it feels dry, it feels bitter. That happens, right, with everybody? And we all add sugar to our coffees?
No.
We all add sugars to our coffees?
No.
It's alright. So coffee is pretty much like Maggie, I say. Everybody has their own recipe, everybody has their own ways. It's like Uno telling you rules or Maggie telling you rules. listen. So similarly, coffee is absolutely a very, very personal product. As roasters, as planters, we can only give you one coffee bag. What you do with the powder is absolutely your own recipe. And there's no good or bad or right or wrong. It's a very, very personal decision. You like your Maggie to be sticky or watery, it's your decision. And there are takers for it. And there are always fights also for it in a fight circle, who makes the Maggie better. Similarly, coffee is going to be different every single time. What we need to do is embrace that inconsistency, so to say, because you know how coffee is also very hygroscopic. Um, what is hygroscopic? So let's say it absorbs everything from the surroundings. So let's say if you're smoking next to open coffee powder, it'll absorb that smell. Do you have a real life reference wherein you smell coffee to kill the smells around you?
Perfume stores.
Right, thank you. Perfume stores, they give you coffee beans. Candle stores, you know, when they're selling wax, where they want you to understand the aromas, they always give you coffee beans to smell. You keep coffee, I mean, you can keep coffee beans even in your cupboards so that all the stale smells get absorbed better. People have now started keeping wax also, aromatic wax in cupboards. But point is, the moment coffees are exposed to oxygen, it's a living organism literally. So it takes in oxygen, releases carbon dioxide, and coffee stays fresher, it gets also older. So in coffee packs around the world, you'll always see there's a little hole at the back. That hole is a one-way valve. It allows oxygen to get out, but carbon dioxide to get out, but not oxygen to get in. So hence coffee stays fresher longer. Yeah, now this was about a coffee being hygroscopic, and you know how, of course, it's a very sensitive product. It's absolutely into your hands how you do it. Coming to how we process the coffees and bring out lighter nuances. So you don't need to add your sugars, you don't need to add flavors, hazelnut, vanilla, cinnamon. You just appreciate coffee as is. So this is all about very nuanced palates, of course. When I say there's cranberry or raspberry in your coffee, it's a tasting note. It's something that one person in the world would have got it, who's a Q grader. So he's certified to like grade coffees. He or she is certified to grade coffees and awarded certain taste profiles or flavor profiles. It's not necessary you get it every day, every brew. It's absolutely fine. So this is called naturals. Now the first jar that you see, these cherries were kept out under the sun for 3 weeks. And you know how you leave a mango outside, it absolutely wrinkles, it shrinks, becomes dark in color. So red cherry has become a very, very thick, dark brown color, hard fruit, so to say. When you see it later, you'll understand. But it has, you know, coffee plantation does not smell of coffee. It just smells of an agricultural farm, simply. Or a lot of fermented fruit smell. There's this fruit is lying on the ground, it's composting, so you know that fermented sarawa, falka smell. So what is happening here is the coffee beans naturally absorb a lot of sugars, inherent sugars from the fruit into the bean. This is a very expensive process because coffees are grown in the hills. You need a flat land to dry this coffee beans. Not everywhere you get flat land to dry the coffee beans. Also through the year it's not used, the land is not used. It's only after harvest it's used. So it's an expensive process. Most plantations don't do it themselves. So there are these curing works where farmers do farm gate sales and then it's cured there. So this is the sweetest coffee, so to say. The second process is called pulp sun-dried. You take out, you peel the mango, you cut the mango, and then the seed still has a lot of recha, it still has a lot of pulp. That is called pulp sun-dried. So we've cleaned the fruit, the seed itself still has a lot of sweetness, it has a lot of mucilage as we call it, which is a very sticky, sugary substance in it, which is still tending the sweetness, but we're cutting down time. Okay, so this is called pulp sun-dried. The third process is called washed, wherein you cut a mango you peel a mango, you cut a mango, then you wash the seed under the tap. So it becomes absolutely clean. Okay. This is the wash process is what we use in around the world for coffee blends as a base of coffee blends. And then you introduce a little bit of pulp sun-dried, a little bit of naturals. So let's say if a blend consists of 1,000 grams of coffee, so 800 could be washed, 150 could be pulp sun-dried, another 150 could be, 50 could be naturals. So that is how we create blends. Because you don't want too sweet coffees. Like I remember yesterday I met a gentleman and he said, I don't like the fruity floral coffees. But that is because they add milk to their coffees. If you appreciate black coffees, in a black coffee scenario, a beautiful fruity floral coffee will be mind good to your palate. And sometimes it's just like having orange juice versus coffee. Like what am I having? Obviously today we do a lot of cocktails with orange juice, but what I'm talking about is getting pure citrus notes in your coffee. Are we all following?
Yes.
I hope I'm not getting too nerdy. So now when you dry these coffees under the sun, there is this little मूंगफली का छिलका जैसा husk, okay, which forms. So this keeps the coffee fresh through the year. That little outer cover. And then every month before roasting, we know how much we have to roast, so we hull it. So we take out the cover, and then we get a beautiful green bean inside. That green bean is roasted at 210 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes. It floats inside, so the green bean, when it touches the bean, it's like a stone. Okay, so only upon roasting, which is basically caramelizing of all the inherent sugars in the bean, it floats in size, it becomes brittle. Imagine cookie dough in a cookie. You put in a cookie dough, when it bakes, it floats in size, it becomes brittle. That is what happens in a coffee bean situation as well. That is Arabica Robusta. We already know this. If ever you want to identify whether you're having an Arabica or a Robusta in a cafe, take a handful of beans, put them out in a tissue paper, and see whether it has an S crack, whether it's oval, or whether it's circular, it has a straight crack. That is Robusta, this is Arabica. But this is very, very generic. Coffee is agriculture. It changes every day, rules change every day. So do not be very harsh on your coffee shop as well. Okay, before we get to the next slide, what are different tasting notes? Can anybody tell me a different taste note? Let's say salty being one,
Sugar, bitter,
sweet,
sour,
bitter.
Floral. Umami.
Fourth is umami, yes. Fifth is umami. Fourth is still missing. Sweet, sour, bitter, salty. 4 tasting notes. And then there is the fifth one, which is umami. You know where umami is found? Like in which food? Sorry? Sorry? I think 1 second.
She's talking to a scientist.
No, like food-wise. She's nerdier than me. Mushrooms, mutton, shellfish, right. So, now sweet, sour, bitter, salty, we won't touch umami right now. Sweet, sour, bitter, salty are your standard 4 tasting notes. What are different flavors? Flavors, tell me a flavor. Spices, spicy flavor. Chocolate, cinnamon, vanilla, coffee, tea, these are all flavors. Citrus, so a chocolate can be sweet, sour, bitter, salty, umami, whatever, acidic, astringent, etc. Similarly, anything that we consume, I mean, even if we were to eat this wood, it could be sweet, sour, bitter, salty. So every flavor has taste. So when we go to restaurants, so we mostly work with hotels, restaurants, cafes, pan India. So we always tell the staff that when you're interacting with the customer, make sure that you tell them flavor separate and taste separate. Because let's say if I'm telling you, oh, this coffee tastes very chocolatey, you might think of a 90% cacao bitter chocolate. You might think of a Milky Bar white chocolate. And somebody else would think of a Ferrero Rocher for all you know. So because chocolate is so varied. So you always have to say it's like bitter chocolate or it's sweet like chocolate. So then you start to imagine milky chocolate in your head. So this is a flavor taster's wheel when we decipher flavors, taste notes out of every cup that we drink. It helps us understand what we are getting in our coffees. Sometimes it's not chocolatey or everything is just grassy and bad, but we understand that using this flavor wheel. These are different coffee makers. So around the world, of course, the Italians invented the espresso. You know, right? Italians don't grow coffee. Yeah, Germans don't grow coffee. Coffee is only grown along the equator. It's only consumed more away from the equator. But they just had the espresso machine. Now, or the stovetop espresso maker, what we call the mocha pot. Back in the day, of course, when Britishers were ruling over us, we've been a poor nation. We've only been exporting coffees around the world. Because the Britishers said, okay, let's say your crop is fabulous. We used to even fetch 40,000 rupees a kg in the export market. Today, 1,000 rupees people, crib. But point is, Indian coffee is extremely beautiful in every manner, except Britishers said, you guys have tea, add your spices and milk and your sugars. And today tea is available at every roadside stall. When we go to Italy, we come back with stories how coffee is available at every roadside stall, even though they're importing that product. Versus India, now because we grow so much coffee and the government needs to encourage coffee, Modi government has added this 120, I think 10 or 20% tax to import coffees. Obviously because they want to encourage Indian local coffees. And the world has been consuming Indian coffee. So some of the largest roasters around the world, largest brands like Lavazza, Ili, Blue Bottle, they all use Indian coffees in their blends. It's almost like they can't do without Indian coffees. So point is, when we look at all these coffee makers, these are all the third wave coffee makers. What is third wave? Have you guys heard of third wave coffee movement or something? Okay. So the first wave of coffee around the world was the instant coffee. You used to get these beautiful vintage tins. You take the powder, put in water, have it, right? The instant coffee. Nescafe, Davidoff, Brew, all of that. The second wave of coffee was the invention of the espresso machine. So around the world we started having espresso, americano, macchiato, latte, etc. etc. Then the third wave of coffee is when we are in the world today, wherein we are saying that all the coffee that you brew should have certain flavor and taste profiles, nuances that you can appreciate, pretty much like wines and whiskies. So that is the third wave of coffee. How do you brew that? Not in an espresso, not only in an espresso machine, but also in different coffee makers. So there's something called a Japanese siphon. They use a cloth filter. Okay, remember all the coffees that we talk about is pure coffee. It's like filter coffee. Like it has to be filtered like your chai. Okay? Like you filter your chai using a chutney, you can filter your coffee using a chutney. No problem, you don't need sophisticated equipment as long as you filter. Because it won't dissolve, right? There's the AeroPress. Remember Frisbee? We used to play with Frisbee. So the inventors of the Frisbee designed this coffee maker called the AeroPress. It's a good travel-friendly device. It's on display outside. There's of course the classic French press, or the cafetiere, or the plunger. It has a metal filter. This guy has a paper filter, and this guy has a fabric cloth filter. Those two pour-over Chemex are similar in principle. They have a paper filter. Now, why do we use paper or cloth or steel? All three are it's a very nerdy thing that I'm going to talk about. But all three of them have a different quality. Same coffee, if brewed in different coffee makers, will taste absolutely different. You can't tell this is the same coffee you're brewing. Why does that happen? Because the principles of brewing are so different. The material itself, first thing, pretty much like walnuts, almonds, our coffees have a lot of inherent oils, okay, which bring in the body, the flavor, aromas, everything. Obviously, cloth, paper, steel, they work differently with oils. Cloth will absorb the maximum amount of oils. Paper absorbs some oils. What you get is a very cleaner brew. So a lot of bitter compounds get absorbed. So if you don't like very bitter coffees, but you want to get used to black coffee, you use a paper filter. And paper filter would be in a pour over or a chemex, which are both basically both pour over methods. And what happens is when paper absorbs bitterness and a lot of other flavor compounds, you get a very, very clean, light brew, which you can just enjoy back to back, 2-3 cups, no problem. In a South Indian filter coffee maker, the dabra as we call it, do we use that at home?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, great. Okay, so first shot for coffee from us, for that. Right? That aside, that coffee maker is, of course, it's a steel filter, wherein it's fully immersion. So all the powder is immersed in water and it slowly drips down, right? Overnight or like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it takes. So that coffee is not hot and is not immediately drinkable. It's not ready to drink. You add extra hot water, you add milk, you add sugar, which is hot, but you don't reheat that, right? Anybody who does this every day, South Indian filter coffee, right? So the decoction that you get, you don't drink it as is, right? It's very good. Also, there's I'll talk about it. Okay, this is the general espresso menu. Tell me what is common in all of them. Clue, the basis of all of it is the same, which is the espresso type. So all these words are Italian, Spanish, whatever from different parts of the world. But the base of all of this is an espresso. So your coffee is the same. The beverage is changing. You never say, I like XYZ roasters cappuccino better than their latte. The coffee is the same. The milk, froth and water variations give you a new beverage. Then you can create like 100 beverages out of it, no problem. But the coffee remains the same. So outside we have a grinder, which is grinding one variety of beans, and then there's our team which is playing around with froth, milk, water, condensed milk, ice, tonic, all of that, and giving you a different beverage. But the coffee is essentially the same. So tell me, just by looking at the images, which one's going to be stronger to you, a latte or a cappuccino? Cappuccino stronger? Why?
It has equal parts of milk.
Yeah, so that's less strong.
Espresso is the strongest.
No, between latte cappuccino, which one's stronger? Why cappuccino? Right, thank you. It has less milk, it has more froth. Froth is just air. So it has less milk, latte has more milk. You want a stronger cappuccino. Now espresso remains same because when you go and order an espresso, a cappuccino, they don't want to increase their cost, right? So espresso being the same, they'll add very little milk. So it becomes a cortado, which is a variation. So there are like 100 variations like this. And you just keep playing around with water and froth and milk. So when you go outside and see the menu, please look how we create different beverages out of the same coffee. There's something called cold brew coffee. Cold brew is basically, how we brew teas and coffees in hot water? Here we brew coffee in cold water. When hot water does not come in contact with coffee powder, a lot of acidity and bitter compounds do not get released out of coffee. So it's just a flavorful cup of coffee. It's very, very high on caffeine. So let's say your average cup of Americano is 40 mg caffeine. A cup of cold brew coffee would be 400 mg caffeine. So it works well in gyms, marathons, fitness. It's a very clean product. It has no acidity also. People who have acid reflux problems or like allergic problems to coffee, cold brew coffee works really well for them. So, and it's so versatile. You can add tea to it, you can add beer to it, you can add whatever under the sky to a cold brew coffee and have it. We also have cold brew coffees being brewed outside. Now this is the one I was dealing the most. addressing this. This instant coffee, the first wave of coffee around the world. How is instant coffee manufactured? I'll tell you. So, do we have instant teas at home?
No.
Tea bags.
No, it's still a bag, it's still a filter.
Yeah, I can see it.
There are
Just
Sorry?
there's an instant coffee which I see all and what
Acha. I'm saying, do you make instant teas at home? Does anybody make instant teas at home?
Yeah.
Your mom does? Okay, 1 in 15.
Instant tea.
There are instant teas as
What
well.
is it?
Like instant coffee, you first brew the tea or the coffee, then you freeze dry it. So we're saying if you don't have instant teas at home, why are you having instant coffees at home? You should brew the product and have it as is. So in a manufacturing setup, there are not many instant coffee manufacturers in India. There are only really large corporations because it's a very expensive process. You first brew the coffee, let's say take an Americano, very freezing temperatures and high pressures. It goes through a machine and it's dried. So all your particles that you get of instant coffee were actually in liquid state, which have been transformed into a solid state. And hence it dissolves in your milk, water, ganache, anything. So that is instant coffee. And my only issue is zero traceability. Do we even know that we're using pure coffee in it? Because we brewed it. Also the nutrition has gone. The real flavors aroma have gone. However, it's not a bad product. It's easy. It helps us increase our coffee consumption, daily coffee consumption, because we don't want to brew. We don't want to spend those 3 or 5 minutes. However, if you remember, my friend and I did this. Okay, so we were on a video call in lockdown. He was in Pune, I was in Delhi, and he was brewing masala chai, and I was brewing myself a cup of pour-over coffee, and I was sitting with my coffee, and his masala chai was still boiling. So coffee brewing is not a tedious process. It's not a time-consuming process. Max it will take you is 4 minutes, not even 4.5 or 5 minutes. And we should all start brewing our own tea and coffee. This is chicory, another little controversial thing here. Chicory is not coffee. Chicory is another plant. It has a little history. I'll just touch upon this. All throughout, we've been exporting coffees around the world. Britishers said, okay, why don't you add some extra plant to your coffee? Because your coffee is great, let's export it. So we started using chicory. The real deal here is why chicory was discovered is during the French War, imports into France were shut. But they needed their daily chai, right? Chai, coffee, whatever. So they started using chicory, another plant. So they roasted it. This is basically the roots of the plant. Chicory is another flowering plant. And they use the roots of that in a kadhai, in this big bowl in the stove. They roast it, and then these little bricks are sold by the kg and added to coffee. That trend picked up around the world, especially poor countries like us. And over generations, we've been consuming chicory. It will take time, but we hope we reduce consumption of chicory because it's not coffee.
To the taste.
It adds a lot of oiliness, a lot of color, black, and extremely bitter profile, which masks everything in coffee.
Yes.
So the person who's using chicory in their blend will obviously be giving you very kg coffee, like very low grade coffee, because the coffee is not highlighting, chicory is highlighting. So why would you? I mean, you'd rather use a inferior product along with chicory, right?
Is instant coffee shy of using any chicory, or
That depends. Now there are brands that are doing pure instant coffee without chicory, which is great. But traditionally our palates are used to coffee with chicory. So let's say if I talk to somebody from Kerala, is anybody here from Kerala? I'm saying that don't tell me my coffee. But I'm not telling them that chicory essentially. So it will take time. But my point is, when you're purchasing coffees around the world, when you're consuming coffees around the world, Make sure it doesn't have chicory. See that you're buying filter coffee, not instant coffee, unless, of course, you make only instant coffee at home. But
Does chicory add acidity or reduce it or?
no. So acidity in coffee. Okay, when we drink coffee outside, I'll touch upon these points. What is body in coffee, tea, wine, whiskey? Where are the whiskey people? Are they around? There are a lot of whiskey people around.
Martinis.
So, what is body in any beverage? Any idea? How to describe body? Oh, this is a well-rounded body, balanced body. How would you describe to an audience? Something simpler. Huh? Mouthfeel. So something like when you take a sip, let's say you have, very stupid example, but let's say you have buttermilk and regular milk. Okay, a regular milk would just taste like milk, but a buttermilk would be more character in it because there could be spices, it's been fermented, all of that. So completely variation in body. So another example that I can give is honey. Have you had single flora honey? Usually the honey that we get in the market is multiflora. Bees go to different flowers and make honey. There's also single flora honey. Let's say the bees are controlled to go in here only into let's say hibiscus flower or like a jasmine flower. So that's a single flora honey. So the body would be extremely different. Multiflora honey, the body is way higher. Higher means the mouthfeel when you take a sip. Sorry, when you take a sip. Okay, was I holding the mic too low? Okay. When you take a sip, you should be able to feel heaviness in your mouth. That is body. So if you don't feel heaviness when you're drinking coffee, you can always ask your barista to make you another cup which is more full body or well-rounded body. It's mostly low body, medium body, and full body.
But how do they make it more full body?
How do they make it full body? It's not how do they make it, it's more to do with the beans, of course. So let's say if you use a Arabica Robusta blend, that blend, okay, how do I describe? So let's do an espresso, we'll address an espresso. How does the espresso taste full body? You have to make sure that you extract the most out of that dosage. Let's say if you use 16 grams of powder for an espresso, all the 16 grams that is going in, you're able to extract all of it. No powder particles should go waste in the filter, in the coffee maker, that does not get water in it. If in a coffee maker there's powder which doesn't have enough water coming in, that powder is getting waste.
But in a French press, for instance?
Right. So this, I'm addressing only brewing right now. I'm not addressing blends or roasting. But in brewing a French press coffee, when you're using a coffee powder to make yourself a French press coffee, if you brew it for 1 minute versus you brew it for 7 minutes, it changes the profile. 7 would have a more bolder body. Yeah. Actually,
Just one more question.
Yeah.
Does chicory have caffeine like the rush that I need from coffee? Would I get it from drinking chicory?
I won't know. I haven't had chicory with water. No, sorry.
Crazy.
But yeah, what is acidity in coffee? This is body. Body is the heaviness. What is acidity in tea, coffee, whiskey, wine? This is all to do with that citric punch in your mouth. So let's say when you squeeze a lemon in your mouth, you open that. That is the acidity. It has nothing to do with the gastric acidity per se. It's the acidity as a profile, as a taste, astringency, pungency. Like if it's pungent, if it's too acidic. So acidity is also measured as low, medium, high. So bright, beautiful, kick dene wali coffee is considered to be a more acidic coffee. And it's massively appreciated, but it can be appreciated only if you're having it black. With milk and sugar, we don't talk about, even with milk, we don't talk about body, flavor, acidity, all that. Then, what is acidity, body? Any other term that you want me to address? There's something called aftertaste. So once you drink the coffee, you start talking, in like a minute or two, you feel a certain aftertaste. Do you feel it's hurting your throat? Do you feel you need a Madeline? Or like water? Do you think you need so basically point is that how does it feel afterwards? when you were drinking the coffee, it felt nice and well-rounded and like milk chocolate, and then later it just feels very bitter. It feels dry, it feels harsh. So you say, okay, it doesn't have a very pleasant aftertaste. Yeah. So these are the terms. I think I'm done with the presentation per se, but I just want to throw some light on consumption and sustainability. So, we work with leading brands of the world like Taj, Oberoi, Postcard, Andaz, Goodman, all these hotels. We work with leading restaurants like Indian Accent in Delhi, and then there's of course the Olive Group and like beautiful cafes, restaurants across the country. What we notice is that the milk you use, the chocolates you use, everything that you consume in the kitchen, slowly all of these have started being a little more conscious. So they are addressing the fact that they need to be traceable. Traceability is huge with our brand. We literally have a farmer here. The farmer's wife is here. Amulya, that is. So each cup of coffee is traceable because we work directly with plantations. Each cup of coffee is entirely traceable to the plantation one. The plot of land, so let's say the plantation is 200 acres, so that 20-acre plot where we are getting coffee from, the plant itself, the plant variety, it's if it's an Arabica or a Robusta, or which species of Arabica Robusta. Then who was the farmer on the job, and the date of harvest. Why do we get access to that data? Because we work directly with plantations. So there's no middleman. And the point is that they maintain registers, so we know exactly where it's coming from. Very sensitive to say this, but when we consume, let's say, meats or like rice or pulses in restaurants or even at home, many times we don't know if that rice farmer who made a farm gate sale actually committed suicide in an Indian scenario, and a Sanjeev Kapoor around the world is making biryani with it. So what we do is we make sure that our partner coffee plantations have more media coverage than us, because we always make sure that the coffee plantation needs to know where their coffee is going. So we complete the entire loop, we buy from you, we sell it here, we brew it here, and then we tell you this is what is happening. So coffee planter can actually go to the restaurant and try their own produce. How this helps, of course, socially, culturally, great, but how this helps in the long run is that tomorrow they can go back to the plantation and work on their crop if they want to achieve something better out of it. So that is how we work with plantations and curing works across south of India, and bring some fabulous coffees for you.
Thank you.